Welcome to Mind Meets Body and Soul, a podcast that connects the dots between clinical mental health and spiritual holistic wellness. I'm Heather, a licensed clinical social worker and mental health guru.
And I'm Devon, a Reiki master, spiritual teacher, and lover of all things woo-woo. We're here to discuss various wellness topics, highlighting the connection between the mind, body, and soul.
We'll be offering nuggets of wisdom from each of our fields with the ultimate goal of bridging the gap between our two worlds. Whether you lean more into cognitive psychology
or flow with the woo-woo waters, our intention is to help you prioritize yourself and unlock a fresh perspective to healing, growth, and expansion. We're so excited you're here. Let's jump in.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mind Meets Body and Soul. This is episode 27, and I'm just smiling so much because I'm looking at you, Devon, and we don't get the time to chat that much anymore. So how are you doing?
It's probably been a week or week and a half since we've really caught up with one another, and that hasn't been typical for us in the past 6 months, but I'm doing well. As you know, before we started this recording, I was coming to you with a little bit of an emotional share, which we will get into at the beginning of this episode. But otherwise, I am doing well. I am in the final days of my time here in Boulder, Colorado. Episode 26 comes out tomorrow, and I'll be heading back to Jersey for a little bit when that episode airs. And it's just wild to think that we're already in October.
Yeah. They say time flies when you're having fun. I'm having a lot of fun, but it's also just it really does. It's flying.
It is. And I think it's when you're having fun, when you're healing, when you're growing a business and, juggling all of the things in your life. So I'm with you there. And speaking of too, I know last episode that aired and also last time we really chatted, you had shared a lot about this comparison trap that you were finding yourself in and, working through those emotions and those insecurities. So how are you?
I'm doing well. I think I still find myself at times getting stuck in the trap, but I'm working to balance feeling the feelings and recognizing that I'm tired and I'm doing a lot of things and it's just not going to be possible. I'm kind of accepting it's not going to be possible for me to do all the things all the time. So I'm balancing that mindset and that acceptance with knowing, the other things that people are doing are cool. And I take note of that. And, I know where I want to go and I'm eager to get there. So it's just kind of balancing my excitement for all the things, but also knowing I can't do all the things all the time.
That resonates so deeply. I think many of us can agree that we see where we want to go. We know where we want to go. And if we could just snap our finger and be there, that would be wonderful. And I think it's the disappointment that we feel in learning that it's not just going to happen at the snap of a finger. And there's a process to all of that. So I honor you for, coming in with that share, for working through these emotions. And it just makes me feel really grateful that we have this platform to use and that we're using it to showcase the things that we're experiencing, the very human experiences that everybody experiences, and getting to see how we navigate them and how we grow through them. And one last thing that I wanted to mention before we really get into the episode is that on the week that this episode airs, we will have officially had this podcast for 6 whole months.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Go us.
Go us. And for those of you who follow the cycles of the moon, it takes 6 months to complete, a full cycle. So here we are from where we started back in April to where we are now in October, both on the personal, professional level, podcast level. It's just really cool to, think about that timeline and everything that has come to fruition throughout.
Yeah, It's been a wild 6 months. It's been a fun 6 months, an unforgettable 6 months. So, thanks, Devon. And on a quick note, I saw a couple days ago your launch of your rebranding. So, talk to us about that.
Yep. Launch of my rebranding. I've been in a process of amending my LLC name. So I started out back in February or March of 2022 with Enlighten and Empower Energy Healing LLC. And then just throughout the time and in these past few months, I really felt like I was making the transition to Enlighten and Empower LLC. And it makes sense. My Instagram handle has always been Enlighten and Empower. I think people have thought that my business was always Enlighten and Empower, probably for that reason. But I filed for amendment earlier on in August. I wanted to avoid Mercury retrograde. And then throughout the weeks, like there were just so many complications, like miscommunications and, forms being filled out, like super Mercury retrograde-esque. And then as as the stars or as the moon would align on the Aries full moon, which was on Friday, I received notification that my LLC name has officially been amended to Enlighten and Empower. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to expanding this business beyond just what I've been doing in energy healing and seeing how it all unfolds from there.
Yay, that's exciting.
It is. Thank you.
Also, speaking of human moments and feelings and all the things, I know you have some updates to share. So let's hear it. What do you got for
Yeah.
us?
So this episode is one that's kind of hitting a little close to home right now as I am wrapping up my time here in Boulder. We're going to see if we can get through this without some tears, but if they come up, so be it. Here for all of the parts. Um, so yeah, it is currently the Monday before the end of my 6 week stay in Boulder. And a week ago, I thought that I would be showing up to this recording, announcing my new home, and potentially even recording from my new home. And then over the course of the week, it all just kind of crumbled. And so it's a very sensitive topic for me. However, at the same time, we were actually already kind of planning on having this conversation in one way or another. And so now it just feels like so much more real to be having this conversation and to be talking on the topic of rejection being redirection, rejection being protection, and how to lean into that trust that when something doesn't work out, there's something so much greater that's on the horizon.
Yeah. It would have been a different episode if you had been redirected into the place and you were in your home. It's unfortunate, and I'm sad that you're so sad. And I think this episode is now so much more raw and like it's going to be so much more organic. And you're really going to model for our listeners what this looks like rather than just us like talking about it. You're like demonstrating it live in the moment.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of it, in the thick of it. So bear with me here. As always, I also thank you for, holding the space for me to share my stories, to share my life experiences and, some of the challenges that I'm going through and some of the lessons learned. So ready to dive into it when you are.
I want to thank you for your willingness and vulnerability to bring this topic in here for an episode. I don't know much other than that you've just briefly shared you're dealing with all this redirection. So, walk us through what you're willing to share, kind of kick us off.
Yeah, thank you. So, as many know, I have been in a process of relocating, of finding my home for the past year now. I was actually in Boulder a year ago for the first time. And this 6 week trip that I was here for, this 6 week visit, wasn't necessarily aimed at finding a home, but of course it was, part of what I was looking for in planting down roots and, navigating my way around. And so with that, I've been, looking around on different rental sites and going to check out apartments. And there was this one place that really surprised me, that really, like, I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did. But I got there and it just like seemed to check off all of the boxes, or at least most of the boxes, if not more than what I had been looking for in a place. And in the beginning, like, it wasn't all smooth, like I wasn't totally sold on it. It kind of took me a few weeks to really, warm up to the idea of it before felt really ready to like take that plunge and to go after it. And I had a friend, a realtor friend, who had been kind of helping me out, like communicating with the management company, just like making sure that any of my concerns, any of my requests would be fulfilled. And so 2 Fridays ago, I had kind of gotten the green light. Like, everything just seemed to be right for me applying for this place. It had actually been on the market since July of this summer, and I really felt like, wow, it's just been waiting for me to like scoop it up. And so I put in my application on that Friday. I felt really good about it. It was available. No one else had applied for it at this time. I knew that there would be like a couple days of processing time before they got back to me. And then here we are, Monday. This is now a week ago. And I found out mid afternoon that my application had been approved and that I could move forward with this home. And it just brought forth like so much excitement, so much like alignment and peace. It just felt so right. At the same time, though, I was also just having like the busiest day ever, where like I was going from meeting to meeting or client to client. So at the time that I found out that I was accepted, I confirmed via email that yes, I wanted this home, I wanted this apartment, and that I would get to it as soon as I could, like putting in the security deposit to secure the apartment and whatnot. So I'm going from like one thing to the next, but I'm feeling super excited. Like, I'm talking to some people here and there, and I'm like, I just got approved. Like, this home is mine. This was the same night that I had to quickly kind of edit the podcast episode that was coming out the next day. And so I was really just like focused on getting through the tasks that I had at hand, knowing that this apartment was mine and I would get to it as soon as I could. And then Tuesday morning, I woke up feeling pretty positive, yet somehow like feeling energetically kind of off and ungrounded. I started out the morning, publishing our podcast episode, and then just feeling like I needed to move my body, feeling like I really needed to ground myself before I tackled anything else for the rest of my day. So I decided to tend to myself by doing a little bit of a yoga movement. And then once I found myself to be more grounded, I put my computer down in front of me, opened it up to, go through the whole security deposit process. And my stomach dropped when I received an email from the management company telling me that because I hadn't, at this point in the morning, put in my security deposit, another applicant was approved and they went forth and put in their security deposit, and the home was no longer available for me.
Oh my gosh.
And that was like the biggest just carpet ripped out from underneath my feet.
Totally. I mean, I remember last week we had a lot going on podcast wise. I know you said you had like a very busy day. So it's so hard to feel already ungrounded and then have like that just kind of ripped out from under you.
And it was rough. Like, every single part of me was like shaking because it felt like, if anybody else has experienced this before, like, it felt like I had this thing that I've been wanting for so long. I felt like it was in the palm of my hand. It was mine. It was confirmed via email that it could be mine, that I wanted it, that I was going for it. And then in like a turnaround of like 15 hours, it wasn't mine anymore. And it just slipped through my fingers and there was nothing that I could do about it. So that was really hard. And that's kind of, what I want to get into today. And I preach this and I work on this with my clients. I live by this principle that rejection is redirection and rejection is protection. And yet here in this moment, immediately finding out that this apartment was not mine, I had this duality of like, one, how did I just lose this place that I thought was mine? At the same time, this is a pretty ironic redirection from the universe.
I think balancing both of those, it does show your growth and that you are on this healing path because I think typically a lot of people would have that experience and jump right into like, how did I lose this? What went wrong? And I think you being able to balance both is actually like the work and the growth because you're not just living in one space. You're working, you're like right away, right off the bat there, kind of balancing and juggling both of those things. That is hard. I always try to acknowledge that in my work with clients. I know how hard this is. I don't know what you're experiencing right now, but I can understand how difficult this is and how emotional this is and how like flipped upside down and chaotic and overwhelming. Like there's so much here that you're talking about.
So much here. And yeah, thank you for, for saying all of that. And what I would really love to do with this episode is kind of like break down both parts. Like I would love to start with the, rejection is redirection and how to kind of work with that, but then also pay mind and give space for that other part of us that feels that rejection and takes it personally and, questions and doubts the reason or the next steps for it.
I would imagine, or at least from my own experience, the second part of what you said, the rejection, the hurt, the questioning, I think that comes first, or at least maybe we feel that first, like, what did I do wrong? Or how did I not know? Or how did I miss this? Or like we like to think that human side of us that we talk about all the time, we want to think we have control. We want to think we have ultimate control or like a whole say in this. The reality though is that there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of factors that are happening here. So I understand why we jump into that because I think that's us trying to protect ourselves. That's our brain being like, all right, like learn from this quickly so you don't do it again. But we're too hard on ourselves because it isn't all up to us. We don't have that like full control over everything all the time in our lives.
Yeah, no, you're so right. The emotional component of that definitely comes in first, right? And then once some time has passed or once you can work through the emotions of it, then that second piece of like, okay, well, rejection is redirection comes in. In my process, in my processing of this, however, it's almost like the spiritual trust and truth of that came first because the first thing that was just beyond ironic is that this place had been on the market since July. And somehow, these same exact hours that I apply for this home, somebody else decides to apply for this home. And in the same hours that I get approved for this place, they got approved for this place. And moments before I'm about to put in my security deposit, somebody else puts their security deposit in first. And that apartment no longer is mine. And so you have to look at that and sometimes be like, how is that not the biggest redirection from universe? Something telling me, okay, it's not actually this place and there's something way better. And we need to make it obvious that it's not this place for you.
Yeah, that was some wild workings of the universe there. Like, quick, get their deposit in, quick, like have them apply because like you were so close. And there were literal moments before everything could have been different.
Yeah. It's just like one of those things that you really like it could not be more coincidental. So these days living in this space and in this trust that everything that I need will be revealed to me, that everything is working for like my highest and greatest good. I was able to in that moment kind of detach a little bit, recognizing like I yes, absolutely, like felt disappointed, felt sad and I was very mindful of that over the next few days. But like that in that moment was like that little light that just like kept me going and kind of made me laugh a little bit because I'm like, all right, clearly I'm being shown something here. And, I think about how this one example, this scenario applies in many different situations. It really brings me to like our podcast photo shoot, like of how we were trying to land this one place, this one photo shoot spot that we thought was perfect. I tried for it, it didn't work. You tried for it, it didn't work. And then eventually, when we just understood that we were being directed to something better, we found ourselves in something even better than we could have imagined. And so I really truly believe that with most things in life, like we can pinpoint or we can look in hindsight at how something didn't work out, and the next or the future thing that did come about was even better, even more aligned for us than we could have imagined or than we could have had with that first thing that didn't work out.
You're speaking a lot to like trusting and faith and letting go and surrendering. Like, I think those are all the things that I'm hearing. And because you've been doing this work and because you've been on this spiritual journey for some time now, I think it allows you the space to know and to trust that like there is something bigger than me at play here. It reminds me a lot of like people in my family who are religious and they trust and know in their heart of hearts that like if something doesn't work, it's not meant to be. And this faith in knowing that, I do think is how we cope with these big, devastating, tragic things that happen because it's so hard for us to wrap our minds around. There's so many feelings, there's grief, there's acceptance, there's like all this stuff, disappointment, all these big, heavy feelings that are coming up. So I do think being able to like put something up to or have faith in something is such an important way for us to cope and deal with all of these things.
I think that's a really good point. Yeah. And, another thing as you're speaking of that, another thing that I want to mention is like that this mindset or this belief that there serves a higher purpose or that we are being guided, that we're supported, that rejection is redirection. Like this is a choice, like we can choose to take on this mindset or belief or not. I choose to take on this belief because I find it comforting. I feel like I'm so loved and so supported. And you're right, like it is in a way too, like a coping mechanism. It's not best when it's used as an avoidance strategy. I never really thought of it like that because I didn't grow up like with a religious background, but I do understand why, those who do come from more of a religious belief or religious upbringing, why they do rely on that faith because it does help us get through some really tough times, and it also kind of serves as that light that's just like guiding us through light, and so sometimes it's helpful.
I do think it's important to know and comforting to know we do have a choice here. We can choose to trust and have faith and believe that there is something bigger and higher. And I know that we're going to get into, this other part too, but we also have a say and we also do have some control. So as most things that we're talking about in this podcast, it's a balance. It's both, right? It's trusting and knowing that rejection is redirection. And I don't have to know where I'm being redirected right now to trust that there's something better. And I can do things to help keep me on that path or follow this path. I don't have to totally just give up my goal of moving to Boulder because this apartment fell through. I can still do things and stay proactive while also trusting that there's something else guiding me along the way.
Absolutely. And to that too, like there's two parts to that that I'm just thinking of. Like one, we talk all the time about how like silly, limited our like 3D human minds are, where like we think that we have all of the answers. We think that we know exactly what we need. And like while I'm not discrediting our human minds whatsoever, You know, like there's just also something to be said about getting out of your own way and accepting that maybe something that you thought was so perfect and so, necessary isn't actually, the most aligned thing for you. And having been in this apartment search over the past year, there were two other apartments that I thought were it. And now I look back at them and I'm like, meh, you know? And so if I could go from thinking that this apartment was the apartment for me to now months later being like, nah, like I want better. Like I think there are so many things like we think this job opportunity or this relationship is the most perfect. There's nothing better out there for us. It's moments like these that kind of like humble us into realizing that like maybe there's something even greater out there that I can't even imagine, that I don't even know right now. And I'm just being asked to surrender that control and trust where I'm going.
Yeah. I'm even thinking too, I'm laughing because I remember when Nick and I were house hunting, I had mentally and emotionally moved myself into like several different homes before we finally found the one. I was like, the couch is going to go here and this is going to go there. And I can see myself in the kitchen cooking this and that. Like, it's fine. And I think maybe part of this too is us. I don't know. Like, I don't want to say, like, don't put all your eggs in that basket either, but it's reminding me of yes, and I think I talked about this in an episode before. Like, yes, you loved this apartment and it had so much to offer. And there's other apartments. And like, even if it's not, even if you can't buy into there's something bigger and there's something better, there's something else. Like, this isn't the end all be all. So if you can't 100% trust that something better is coming your way, there is always something else. There's always going to be another apartment. There's always going to be another house. And I think that's where it's like the therapist part of me is like, sit in those feelings, grieve, be disappointed, feel sad, and then move forward. Like that you have the choice then to not just give up
Mm.
and totally, like, you don't have to totally surrender, but you also don't have to like grip your claws in and be like, no, this is the apartment, I have to have it. Like, that's probably not going to work out so much either.
Yeah, and it brings me to that visual, that GIF that you had sent me, or that GIF that you had sent me when we were figuring out the whole podcast photo shoot process of like the Kool-Aid man just like barreling down the wall trying to, get through. And yeah, that's a reminder here again that all of this is a choice. It may feel accessible to some in different ways than others. And to speak to the whole like envisioning yourself like mentally, emotionally, it's that attachment piece that is the most difficult thing to sever or to break, because very similarly, especially when I found out that this apartment was going to be mine, I spent the entire night just visualizing it all. Like I had the furniture going where it was. I had the text that I was going to send out to all of my friends to tell them I finally found my dream place. I had the Instagram post in my head of sharing with my Instagram followers that I had found this place. And it was so synchronistic because it was a year after I first came to Boulder. Like every single part of me had already moved in emotionally, mentally. And then to have that taken away, it brought about like the biggest disappointment that I think I've felt recently. And so that's that second piece of like, yes, rejection is redirection. And also, we can't get to there fully until we deal with the emotional components that come with that.
It's so hard to knowing that we were having this episode. I was thinking about like how I've been redirected in my life. And there's been a few different instances where I can say like I was redirected to a better place. But I remember a few years ago, I was feeling so burnt out in my job and I was really trying to actually do a career change into like human resources. I was like, I can't do the clinical anymore. I am like so burnt with it. And I was applying for jobs, applying for jobs. I was applying for like over 5 jobs every day for like several months, and I was struggling. I was devastated. I was crying all the time. It was so hard. And I'm now like, I'm not in it anymore, but the universe, God, whatever it is that you believe, they were like, no, you are not switching careers. We're not allowing it to happen. But I wanted it so, so badly. And like, it wasn't happening. I was forcing it, forcing it, forcing it, forcing it, forcing it. It wasn't happening. I was redirected. And if I had made that change, we would have never met. We probably wouldn't be here sitting here having this conversation. I wouldn't have my business. Like so many things would be different, and I would be so sad if I missed out on all of this. So, I mean, we've talked about toxic positivity. I'm not trying to put that on you when you're in your feelings right now. I think it's trying to figure out, how can I feel my feelings and validate them, and also know and have that faith and trust that there is something better coming. I might not see it, I might not understand it, but I know there's something else. And it's just really trying to like hold space for both of those.
Mm. Yes, yes to all of that. And before we get into that emotional piece too, it's reminding me of something that I saw on Instagram actually before this whole housing situation happened. And it's something called the burnt toast theory. As you were speaking about this, I had to look it up just so I could like familiarize myself with this. But it supports this mindset or this belief that we are always like being guided towards what's, truly most aligned for us for our highest good. And the whole theory is about like imagining one morning you burn your toast and it makes you late for work. Of course, there's like that frustration that you burnt your toast, that you are now running late for work. But imagine if or that lateness could have prevented you from being in a car accident. And I loved that because with this mindset, you accept the lateness or you accept the redirection and you actually find yourself in a place of gratitude for that redirection. And it helps, if not in the present moment, then down the road, bring in that gratitude for whatever it is that you were being redirected from and to.
Yeah. I think that's where I struggle with this kind of topic, because I never want it to be like too discrediting, too positive. Like sometimes we're not in that gratitude. It's like, damn it, I burnt my toast. I'm running late. Like, this is so annoying. Nothing's working this morning. Like, fine. And then, like, I think later in the day, or when you can try to access that gratitude, once you've felt and worked through those feelings, circle back and notice what else happened, maybe as a result of that burnt toast. So I can sit here now several years later where I'm not in the burnout and trying to switch careers, and I can feel grateful for all that happened and all the frustration that I had to deal with to get to where I am. For you, Devin, like you might not be there right now. And that's also okay too. Like if you're still in your feelings, if you're still, or if anyone listening is like still in the feelings, like that's okay. We're saying feel the feelings, validate them, and then know that there's something else. Eventually you'll be redirected and able to hold space for that gratitude too.
Exactly. And honestly, our conversation on toxic positivity and spiritual bypassing really stuck with me in this moment because it just made me so much more mindful about, when I shared this news with those friends who less than 24 hours had been so excited for me. I mentioned in that text that I felt really sad and really disappointed. And at the same time, I also trusted this redirection. And, so many of the people that responded to me at the same time said that, like, yeah, I would be really angry as well. And yes, there's something better coming. And those emotions and eventually getting to that place of gratitude was something that I had to process as well. Like we've talked in so many episodes about how like grieving is so prevalent in some of the experiences that we have and in avoiding that like spiritual bypassing that toxic positivity. And that really brings me to yesterday, which was like almost a week later after this whole experience, probably because I was thinking about like the end of my trip coming up and all of the emotions were surfacing. Like the first thing that was there, first and foremost, was anger. I was so angry that I didn't have this place, that I was coming to the end of my 6-week trip, heading back to New Jersey with no plan. I was so angry at myself for not acting sooner on the security deposit. I was angry at the universe for like giving me such a taste, or like letting me hold this new home in the palm of my hands and then just taking it away. And I think that that's normal for anything that we want or think that we want, that we think that we have, and then to lose it or to have it taken, or, to be redirected. It's natural to feel that. And I'm glad that that was a part of my process, because it made me realize like how important it was for that anger to first be there.
I always say too in therapy that I kind of feel like anger is a fake emotion sometimes. And I'm like, please bear with me and don't take that at face value. In that, I mean that anger is like our armor. For it's so much easier for us to be angry than sad, or frustrated than disappointed. Like those softer, like more vulnerable feelings are uncomfortable for us. Anger is pointed outward in that, like, I can be angry at this person, I can be angry at myself, and it's like righteous almost, in that like we feel like we can do something about it. But the sadness, the disappointment, like those feelings are way, they require us to have more surrender and to kind of just sit in this place where there isn't much that I can do other than feel the feeling. So it makes sense to me that you were first angry. And most people do, I think, jump into that anger because we're like, we're almost like energized, like, all right, like, what am I going to do about it? How am I going to fix it? And that's the Kool-Aid man. But then we kind of sit back and we're like, oh, I just have to feel it. I am so sad and so disappointed.
You hit the nail on the head there. And yes, I understand it from the ego standpoint too, because like our ego wants to point the finger and wants to like find the problem. Like, who's the problem here? It's not me. Who's the problem right here? Or it is me. And I'm pointing the finger at myself. But I've mentioned this before, journaling is my go-to like self-soothing method. Like I need to get my thoughts and my emotions out at some capacity, and like getting them down on paper really helps. So I noticed the, trajectory of this grieving process. Like first there was so much anger, and then I recognized that beneath that was frustration. And then when I was able to go a little bit deeper, there was sadness. And that's where the tears just started pouring in, because I was so sad to be leaving this place, to not have a plan. I was sad because I really wanted this to work out and it wasn't working out. And I was sad because I felt not only disappointed in myself, but I also like kind of felt like I was letting other people down in some strange way, because everybody's been so supportive and so excited and always asking me like, have you found the place yet? And in that moment, it was just sadness, thinking about coming back to New Jersey and just being like, I didn't find the place.
It's hard. There's so many things at play. There's so many emotions swirling around. It's a lot. So in knowing that we're like nearing the end of the episode, what final things do you have to say, to offer? Did we flush this out enough for you? Like, was this helpful? Like, where are we at here?
Yeah, it was so helpful for me to, talk about it, to explain my process. And like, I'm still feeling sad about it. Like, that sadness isn't going away. And I don't think it, necessarily will right now. But having acknowledged that sadness and like talking to a friend about it, talking to you about it, like getting those kind of tears out and explaining how I'm feeling about it. It's like we talked about in the emotions episode, you have to move that energy out of your body. And in moving that energy out, in writing about it and talking about it and crying it out, it creates more space within. And I think that's where we can then allow acceptance. And then after that, gratitude to come in, because we've created that space energetically in our bodies. Like if the energies of anger frustration and sadness are taking up so much of our being, there's truly no space for acceptance, gratitude, and trust to come in. And so that's kind of what I want to end with, is like to get to this place of deep rooted belief that rejection is just redirection. We can't bypass the emotional part of that. And if we can look at it from like the energetic standpoint, as I just mentioned, like we have to actually create that space for gratitude and trust to come in.
Yeah. I was just looking up because the other day it was Good Neighbor Day. So I posted some Mr. Rogers quotes, and he had said, one of them that I posted was, when we can talk about our feelings, they become less overwhelming, less upsetting, and less scary. And I think what it's doing, like you talking about it or our listeners talking about their feelings, helps us like zoom out and see the whole big picture instead of feeling so stuck in like the nitty gritty. Like you said at the beginning, I am so in it right now. And I think if nothing else, us talking about it allows you that space to kind of zoom out and see the gratitude or just see the whole big picture instead of feeling so stuck in it.
100%. Yeah, it's exactly what it is, and great quote from Mr. Rogers. So thank you for bringing that in there. And yeah, I mean that's exactly what it is. Like it's important that we're emphasizing in this episode, and you've said it before too. Like we can't rush our way to gratitude, and I think the purpose of all of this, like self growth and self healing and self evolution, is to come to this place where all emotions can exist at the same time. And that ideally, yes, we do make our way to gratitude and to trust, but in a way that serves us, in a way that feels most accessible to us.
Yeah. We chatted a little before we got on this call. So I kind of want to like throw something out here to you. And I want to see if you can like sign us off today. I know you obviously don't have your vision board, but I have a feeling that there might be something within your eyesight that is calling out to you today. So I want to kind of leave that with you.
So, so I did just tell you in the beginning of the episode, actually, and I didn't realize at the time how perfect this would be. But I shared with you that yesterday I just came across one of our stickers that we created for the Little Words Project Wellness Getaway. And these stickers like had our either like taglines or reminders or sign offs. And at the end of each episode, I say, trust that everything you seek is unfolding for you. And I just put that sticker on my laptop yesterday. We've had that sticker since what, August? I
Mm-hmm.
then stuck it in my suitcase, traveled with it from New Jersey to Boulder, haven't touched it for 6 weeks. And then last night I put it on my laptop. So trust that everything you seek is unfolding for you is my send off for today.
I love that.
That's what you were talking about, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was it. You caught my drift.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Devin. I know that this is hard, and I know it's really hard to be patient and trusting and feeling all the feelings at the same time. So I'm proud of you for all that you're doing, and I appreciate you for sharing this vulnerable share in this episode. But I'm excited to see what's coming. I know there's something coming, and I will be here cheering you along until you get there.
Thank you, Heather. And I look forward to that day, that episode, that Instagram post, that text, whatever it is, whenever it is that I have found my dream place. And it was better than I could have even imagined. So
Yeah.
until then, I will be acknowledging the sadness, feeling it all. I thank you again for always allowing me to come into this space with these shares. And I look forward to the future conversations that we have.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening. We will see you next week.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye. We are so glad that you took the time to share this space with us. We'll be releasing new episodes of Mind Meets Body and Soul every Tuesday, so be sure to give us a follow and share this podcast with those you love.
To connect with us and join our communities, head to the show notes where you'll find our contact information and individual websites. Until next week, stay grounded, keep growing, and trust that everything you seek is unfolding for you.